members and also new Pan-African students who just joined us for the first time. My name is Awod Ngwenya. I'll be moderating the meeting here in Harare, Zimbabwe, at the headquarters of our Love Black People. Our offices are located at Rainbow Towers Hotel. So thank you so much. I welcome each and every one of you. We appreciate you joining this call, Pan-African History Meeting powered by the I Love Black People application. Hope each and every one of you does have the moderators in the groups for those who are on WhatsApp. If you're not on WhatsApp, you can drop your number in chat so that you can be added to our groups. Thank you so much for joining. I can see we do have many people who joined us before. We appreciate all of you. Thank you again. To start off the meeting, I will start off with the prayer, and I'll pray in my own indigenous language, which is Shona, which is local language here in Harare, Zimbabwe. So let us pray. Zvichitaura zvachataura zvigwa zvinorapo pazwa nembiri yenyu tanamata zvose tenzi kuisa mumwe neumwe achazorepresenta macountries avo kune tunhu yakasiyana siyana. Mwari baba dai mungavatungamirira zvishoro zvavo ndimunoziva zvapakati mata zvose tenzi ane iyo mbiri yenyu amusingaperi. Amen. So thank you. I can see I welcome sorry, I just lost some network. Sorry, I just lost some network. I was saying, co-hosting me is Yvonne Dushime. She's from Rwanda. She's our database manager. Again, with this meeting, we'll be discussing Pan-African history and also the healthcare class with Nana Akua. Pan-African history is led by Dr. Taryn Wright. She's a professor at the City of New York University in New York, in the United States of America. So thank you so much all. Yes, Yvonne, you can mute. You can unmute our brother Clyde Fowler. Yes, brother Clyde Fowler, can you hear me?
Yes, good day. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. You can go ahead and present your reports. Thank you so much.
Yes, good morning, everyone. My report is as follows. Guyana is a cooperative republic in South America. We're the only English-speaking country here in South America. The name Guyana means land of many waters. We are diverse both in culture and in terms of ethnicity. We have 6 races here. The Africans mainly come from Barbados and Ghana through the slave trade. We have been being second-class citizens in this country here. The pandemic have had a toll on us. We recently had an election a few years ago, and we have been battling racial tension because it's an Indian government, and the Africans here are being sidestepped. Just recently there was a killing where the police shot a young man because of the country they have the drug trade going on, and the young man was shot because of circumstances that they're different stories coming from the police. However, the pandemic has been on us. The government opened the country, and they've been using a lot of artists, bringing artists in the country to try to promote a lot of activities, because the African basically support these things, and so the pandemic numbers are starting to rise again. We had recently 2 deaths. Mostly the government don't know how to handle the situation, so they're just trying to bob and weave amongst the thing. And so I'm excited to share the app, because right now in Guyana here we're having the black people being targeted. I just want to share a little about my situation. A few days ago, the Guyana Water Company come and cut off my water. Instead of they came to cut off the ministry water, and they end up cutting off my water. I went into them, and they now are telling me that I don't pay water bill, I don't do this, I don't do that, trying to divert the thing. So we have black people become target, and now I'm happy to say that I'm starting to share the I Love Black People app, and it's going viral, because here in Guyana we feel that we are being targeted, and this app has been able to share with others, and they're starting to learn. Myself, I'm a Pan-African chairman for the Guyana branch, and now an ambassador here, so I'm able to share what I'm learning. So with that, I want to say thank you for allowing me to share this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Clyde Fowler. We appreciate you, and also would like to thank you again for sharing our app in Guyana and the surrounding areas to all your friends and family. We do appreciate you. Thank you so much. On next, we're going to hear from our brother Andrew Magombo. He's an ambassador as well from Malawi. Yes, our brother Andrew Magombo. Can you hear me? You can unmute yourself.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, you can go ahead and present your report, which you compiled on behalf of people of Malawi.
All right. Hello, everyone. I have a report here, and all the activities in the report are falling under the dates 12 June 2022 to yesterday, 17th June 2022. Here are the activities which us as ambassadors from Malawi we managed to have. Malawi is in the state of alert against all racism and xenophobic attacks against Malawian immigrants. We shared the weekly tasks for the I Love Black People members and ambassadors after members attended the Zoom meeting for healthcare and Pan-African history last week. And in the week, members were encouraged to update the I Love Black People app and give feedback and share it to family and friends to ensure that they have access to safe places. And ambassadors were also told how the app has eased the work of recommending safe places. Social media platforms for our community were shared, and members were encouraged to follow, subscribe, like, and share. Members were also encouraged to register for their attendance to this Saturday call. And the community members and ambassadors were asked to prepare, write, and submit weekly reports. That was on Thursday and Friday yesterday. COVID-19 updates in Malawi. As of yesterday, 17th June 2022, new cases we were having 29. There's a slight increase in the numbers, because in the previous weeks we are having 16, 14, but right now we're having 29 and some days 28. Cumulative cases, so far we have 86,189. Total cases recovered, we have 82,951. And total tests conducted so far, they're amounting up to 580,326. So far, 2,643 members, Malawian citizens, have died due to the pandemic COVID-19. And the total fully vaccinated people are amounting up to 1,450,7 718. This data has been collected from the Ministry of Health in Malawi. The COVID-19 situation in Malawi is still considered stable, yet in a state of alert. And this report has been compiled by Andrew Magombo from Malawi. I am because we are. Thank you.
I am because we are. Thank you so much, Ambassador Andrew Magombo, for presenting the report on behalf of people of Malawi. Do appreciate you. On next, we are going to have Ambassador Edwin Chamba from Tanzania to present this report which he compiled for this week. Yes, Brother Edwin, you can mute yourself. Can you hear me?
Hello?
Yes, sir, we can hear you. You can go ahead and present your report on
Yes, thank you.
Tanzania.
Hello?
Yes, sir, we can hear you. You can go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Greetings, everyone, members and ambassador. I'm Ambassador Edwin Chamba from Tanzania. In this week, we shared with friends and family to insist them about joining the movement in protecting Black people against racism and xenophobia by downloading the I Love Black People app, recommending Black-owned and Black-friendly businesses. Then we shared with friends and family around the world. The group activities in this week were mainly to make sure everyone downloads the app of I Love Black People Safe Places and share with friends and family, as well as recommending favorite places in categories of education, health, transportation, and other to protect Black people against racism and xenophobia. We were required to follow all the social media pages for I Love Black People in order to share, post, and reposting I Love Black People posts and confirming for Saturday Pan-African Community Zoom call, as well as inviting friends and family to join us in the movement by making sure that they protect Black people against racism and xenophobia. COVID-19 updates in Tanzania shows that there is no changes in statistics, as it is number of cases are still 35,354 cases and 840 deaths. But still we take care as we use protective measures to combat infections all over the country. I encourage everyone to make sure that they download the I Love Black People Safe Places app so that they update it, use it to recommend Black-owned and Black-friendly businesses so that we have a powerful movement focusing on protecting Black people against racism and xenophobia. Thank you. I am because we are.
I am because we are. Thank you so much. We appreciate you, Ambassador.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Yes, on next we're going to have our brother, and he's an ambassador also moderating. He's doing a lot of work for the Love Black People, helping us preaching the Love Black People Safe Places application in order for each and everyone who first to download it. His name is Derry Anton from Ghana. Yes, brother Derry Anton, you can unmute yourself. Yes, brother Derry, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Good afternoon.
All right, you can go ahead and present the report on behalf of Ghana.
Okay. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to give reports about activities that went on in the Ghana group within the week. To begin with, in last week's meeting, we had the country group report from the representatives who were available. Our new moderators who were also available introduced themselves. Our co-founder gave his speech. Then we had a successful health and Pan-African class from Nana Kuya and Dr. Tylen Wright, respectively. The meeting came to an end. In addition, we were encouraged to invite our family and friends to join the I Love Black People family as members or ambassadors. Also, our new moderators for the group Our new moderator for the group in Ghana introduced himself to us as Antonio Domingos. Furthermore, a WhatsApp group link was kept on the page for us to share to our family and friends to join to know much about the ILoveBlackPeople family. We were again reminded to download the ILoveBlackPeople app to identify and recommend Black-owned and Black-friendly businesses. Links were provided for easy download by both iOS and Android users. Personally, I'm still encouraging family and friends to download the app and put it into use. Though they are feeling reluctant, in doing it, but I'm taking my time explaining the benefits of the app and the family as a whole to them. COVID-19 updates in Ghana. Ghana has recorded a total of 163,332 since the emergence of COVID-19. Out of this, the active cases are 1,064. The number of recoveries are 160,823, and the deaths recorded so far, 1,445. Derry Anthony, reporting from Ghana. I am because we are. Thank you.
I am because we are. Thank you so much, our brother Derry Anton, for presenting the report on behalf of people of Ghana. We do appreciate you, and also we would like also you to continue doing the good work which you are doing in order for everyone. You hope in assisting each and every one of us to understand the application and also to download it in order for us to recommend more safe places for Black people around the globe. We appreciate you, brother Derry Anton.
Thank you.
Yes, without wasting time, we're going to give our co-founder, Mr. Christopher Mapondera, to give us a speech for today. So after Mr. Mapondera, we're going to have a lecture from Nana Akua and also Pan-African History class with Dr. Tyrone Wright. Yes, Mr. Mapondera, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Let me set up. Yes, can you all see me?
Yes, we can see you and can hear you clearly, say.
Oh, okay. And welcome everybody. Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to get to meet with you every Saturday. I'm always looking forward to that. Before I get into my subject today, are there any comments from last week or issues people wanted me to talk about?
They are not.
They're not, okay. Okay, so today I'm going to talk about ideological contradictions. What I mean by that is that, okay, we're talking about, being Pan-Africanists, and we've got different notions, for what that is all about. What is a Pan-Africanist supposed to do? What does it mean? How do you relate to one person to the to another? How do nations, relate to one nation to the other? So you'll find that quite often people try to look for these contradictions, in the Pan-African world or in the Pan-African ideology. Say, oh, you say you're a Pan-Africanist, but why are you doing this? Why are you doing that, and so forth? And at times they want to discourage you and tell you that, well, the ideology that you're trying to follow doesn't make any sense. There's no way where it can be applied. This is just something, that you are wasting your time on. Now, if you are not prepared to deal with the contradictions that people will try to play on in order to discourage you, then you go along with them. Say, oh yeah, maybe I don't think it makes any sense to be a Pan-Africanist. What do I get out of it, and so forth. What I can say is that there's no ideology that has there be contradictions. So what we have to do ourselves as Pan-Africanists is be able to see how we analyze those contradictions and how do we make sense out of them, and how do we build out of those contradictions. I mean, like life is full of contradictions. I mean, you're born today, but you're going to die another time. A tree germinates, is going to die one way or the other. You start a journey today, but that journey is going to come to an end sometime. You start school today, you're going to look forward to graduating from school. You start a job, you start working, you get to a point where you're saying, okay, I'm going to have to retire. So these are all contradictions of life, you know, that something, there's nothing that is perfect. Life has got all this duality, you know, that every side, not just like they say, there's two sides to anything, you know, you've got the positive, you've got the negative. Now, with our Pan-Africanism, we got some contradictions, you know, that, for instance, you find that there are wars, you know, within ourselves, you know, whether there's tribal wars, wars, you know, between countries, because we have not yet accepted that the boundaries that were set up by colonists were not in our favor. Our ancestors, they didn't recognize these boundaries. They could, you know, move back and forth in between new countries that were being imposed upon us. Within our own countries, I'll give you a few examples, and I would like to hear maybe from people in Tanzania or DRC, you know, what exactly is going on. Last week, there was, and there's currently a campaign going on now, that the Tanzanian government is relocating or trying to force the Maasai people to be relocated from their ancestral homes or villages to another place so that the government can make room for some Middle Eastern hunters to come and, you know, establish, you know, hunting safaris in the lands that were formerly, you know, that belongs to the Maasai people. Now, when somebody looks into such a situation, and if it is that what they say it is, that becomes a contradiction, you know, that how can you do that to your own people? What is the difference, you know, between when the colonists or the imperialists came and started relocating, you know, African people because they wanted to use their land for their purposes? Now, you may have now a situation where a country may say, well, we're going to have to relocate our people because it's in the national interest that they move from where they are to go to another place and so forth. But you then have somebody who may not understand the situation and say, oh, look at what your own government is saying. You know, you come here in the West, you're complaining about racism or wherever you are, but look at how your own government is treating its own people. So those kinds of contradictions, then we've got to, rather than just take them at face value, then we have to analyze, okay, was it necessary or is it necessary, you know, for the government to relocate people from their ancestral homes to another place? Are there any other options that may be looked at? Is the movement, the relocation of these people, is it going to provide benefit for the whole entire society? So you have to look into those kinds of situations. You have a situation like in the Central Africa, you know, you get all these stories, you know, that you've got Rwanda is sponsoring, you know, people into DRC, or Uganda is doing this, or vice versa, and so forth. Then you say, if these people believe and talk about Pan-Africanism, they're all members of the AU and so forth, why would they be sponsoring, you know, fighters to go and destabilize each other's countries and so forth? Well, whether that is happening and the nature in which it is happening, again, is something that we would like our comrades and friends from those particular countries to actually enlighten us as to exactly what is going on. I know that, you know, of course, wherever there are resources, external forces will come in and start dividing us. Just like we have seen, you know, happening in, you know, even in Congo itself, you know, which has been an unfortunate thing, that the killing of Patrice Lumumba was simply because Patrice Lumumba was talking about the Congolese people having direct control of their resources. And that is something that the colonial powers, Belgium and the Western countries, could not accept. That we should have control of our resources. Same thing as I mentioned last time. In Libya, the reason why Gaddafi lost his life is that he was talking about the unification of Africa, not only from a political point of view, but from an economic point of view. Gaddafi was talking in terms of where we should use gold as a way of maintaining value for our currencies and so forth. Now, and also he was talking about creating an African currency, that you can trade, we can trade amongst ourselves with our own currency. We don't have to look for external currencies and so forth. But because he said that, what happened to Libya? Right now, Libya has been broken, into all kinds of factions and so forth. And who is benefiting out of it? It's not the Libyan people, but the external forces are benefiting out of that. Last week, there was a report coming out of Uganda, that Uganda has discovered deposits of gold. I mean, the figures are just flying all over the shore, so I really don't know which is which. I think the Ugandan government is talking about 31 million tons of gold. Others are talking about 300-some million tons of gold in Uganda and so forth. And the report was that, well, this will make Uganda one of the richest countries in Africa, which means the total value of the gold they are talking about ranges from anywhere from the $12 trillion to some really crazy figure. That the essence of it really is that if that is true, that you've got those resources, then we can expect that if we don't think in our Pan-Africanist light, you're going to start seeing all kinds of conflict starting out in Uganda. Then you get to wonder why, why it is happening. It's simply because somebody feels, that the Ugandan people should not benefit from the gold resources that have been found in their country. Therefore, someone will start fomenting whilst we are fighting amongst ourselves. Then, the other external forces will be busy, looting our resources. That's the same thing that, again, you find has been the story in DRC. That was the story in West Africa. Each time any African country discovered oil, you'd be rest assured that there's going to be some insurrection coming from somebody, from somewhere. And then it is all made in the disguise, well, look at these African people, they're just killing each other and so forth. My message is that we have to be able to manage these contradictions that we have, in our own ideological systems, that we are we propound, that yes, there's no system that doesn't have contradictions. Even with the capitalism itself, you find that you don't have a perfect capitalist system. There's always a certain level of communism in capitalism, a certain level of communalism in capitalism. You've got the same thing, vice versa. So-called communism. There's also a very, significant level of capitalism in that system. There'll be the general thing is that for communism, they are saying, okay, we want to do things on behalf of the nation, but there will still be individuals who are making tons and tons of money out of that system. Then you say, okay, how come you're talking about being a socialist or a communist that you cater for the needs of the majority, and yet you've got all these oligarchs, that are coming up, controlling the vast resources of the nation. But as you can see, even with the Russians or the Chinese and so forth, they no longer talk of having, a pure communist system, pure socialist system. We are now really talking more of a mixed economy. There are elements of socialism, elements of communism, and elements of capitalism in almost all these nations. Now, for us as an African people, because we are still going through developmental stages, having been retarded in our development, by the colonial powers, who were holding us back, controlling our resources, controlling what we can do and how we can do it and how fast we can do it and so forth. We have to then accept the transitional period that we are in and see how we manage it, but making sure that for whatever we are doing it for us, for ourselves, for our generation and for generations to come. So my message that yes, there are contradictions in everything that we do, but we should not allow that to derail our thinking, our ambitions. You see, like with Thomas Sankara, he was doing a lot for the good of his people, but what happened? Some foreign powers engineer for his assassination, and it's only now several years later, that the majority of the people in Burkina Faso are now beginning to understand and appreciate what Thomas Sankara was talking about. Same thing you find in Mali. Today, Mali is at the brink of a major catastrophe engineered from outside, because the Malian people are saying, no, we want to have better control of our own resources, for our own lives. And France tries to come through the back door and say, no, we will not allow you to do that, because when you have a policy in Mali, which is good for the Malian people, that policy is not good for French people. So as an African people, as a Pan-Africanist, we have to look out for things like that, and to see how do we deal with it. Should similar situation happen in our own countries? And if we are not careful, I'm sure even in countries like Mali or in other countries where they are being stabilized, there will be others who say, oh no, I think the French are correct, because what they are doing, there could be some leaders who may be doing things that we're not happy about and so forth, but you can't use that as an excuse for allowing an imperial power to come and to stabilize you. You have to then put things into perspective. Say, okay, why are the French trying to destabilize Mali the way they are trying to do? And as I say, wherever there are any major resources, natural resources, there will always be some conflict that is created from outside. We've got a situation in Mozambique right now. Again, all of a sudden, Mozambique was never known as a place, where you'd have the jihadists and all those kinds of people. But all of a sudden, we've got a jihadist problem in northern Mozambique, simply because they found large resources of natural gas, all kinds of minerals in northern Mozambique and so forth. So let's say always watch out and accept that there will always be contradictions in whatever we do, but it's how we manage them and how we put them into perspective. So I think this is really what I have for you today. I was just trying to see some of the comments that are coming. One is why really the government of Tanzania are looking to relocate the Maasai people. Well, again, as I said, from what we read in the press and coming out is that they want to create room for some Middle Eastern countries that may have promised them a lot of money, that they want to have, convert the area where the Maasai live into a wildlife park for hunting and so forth. But that don't make any sense. So that you have to relocate people in order to allow somebody to come and kill your animals, for pleasure. I mean, in a few years' time, you'll find that we'll have to go to Europe to go and see what a lion looks like and a giraffe looks like when we have allowed these guys to come and kill all our animals. So, well, to your answer to your question, this is what I gather, that the Tanzanian government is trying to relocate the Maasai people in order to create a game park for some Middle Eastern countries that have promised to demand. What is that? The northern central western is the Uganda. The gold core worth $12 trillion, but we scared Uganda becoming the richest country. Now we might go into a civil war due to Western powers who want anything free. Yeah, okay, I agree with you. The comment, I can't read the name, but yes, that's true. As I've said, that wherever with abundance of resources are found in Africa, you can rest assured that you're going to have a war. You're going to have instability. So as Pan-Africanists, this is something that we have to look out for and find ways in which we can deal with. Anything else? Okay, it looks like there's not much, any more questions. Yeah, but anyway, I hope you find what we discussed today to be helpful or to be something to think about. As I say, Pan-Africanism is a dynamic philosophy. It's always changing. We have all these contradictions, but it is our duty as Pan-Africanists to put it into perspective and interpret what it all means and how we can mitigate against it. Okay, thank you so much. It's up to you now.
Thank you so much, co-founder Mr. Mapondera, and I will appreciate you bringing the topic. And also we had Edwin Chamba, Andrew Magombo, Muganis Adonis, and the Kato Jolly being participating whilst we also speaking. We appreciate all of you for participating with our co-founder, giving us your views, your opinions. We would encourage each and every one of you to also communicate using the chat room, like what Andrew Magombo, Edwin Chamba, Adonis, and Kato Jolly were doing. Thank you so much, our co-founder.
Okay, you're most welcome. You all have a wonderful weekend and wonderful week. See you next time.
Thank you. All right, see you next time. Same applies to you.
Okay, bye. Thank you.
Bye. All right, next we're going to have Pan-African Healthcare Lecture with Nana Akua.
Good
Yes, Nana Akua, can you hear
morning.
me?
Yes, I can. Good morning, good day, good evening, everyone. I hope everyone is well. Greetings, all you beautiful Black people out there. Hello, hello, hello. Thanks for joining us. Hey, Yvonne. So yes, today we are talking about, this is week 3. So we are talking about stress management and how to feel well. We've spent the bulk of the sessions talking about physical wellness. And so we always like to highlight being mentally and emotionally well, being able to identify stress, knowing when we're stressed, and then what to do about it. There are a number of holistic modalities that address stress release and stress management and feeling emotionally well. We know that life has many stressors. There are many things that will cause stress in our lives, and it is just as prevalent and certain as life itself. We know one saying is the only thing that's constant is change. We know that change will always occur. I think that we could apply the same to stress. We know that as long as we're living, there will be some stress, some pressure, some force, something put up against a situation to cause some kind of strain or stress or pressure, which is pretty much a working definition of what stress is, something that adds to some sort of manipulation or strain or strife to a situation and causes some kind of dis-ease or some kind of imbalance of such. Let's see if I can. Yes, hey, it's up there. Awesome. So sometimes it's so seamless and sometimes it's so difficult, but I'm thankful that it was easy to share the screen today. So this is really sort of the end of the presentation, but let me just start here. We know that there are stress components in various areas of our lives. So it could be physical stress, where you have appetite change, weight loss or weight change, rashes, physical aches and pains, insomnia, things like that. But then we know there's also spiritual stress. This could be feeling empty, feeling like you have no meaning, feeling like you're doubtful and uncertain and apathetic and unforgiving. There are relational types of stress where you feel isolated, you feel you're intolerant of different people or situations, you have resentment, loneliness, distrust, you lack intimacy and being able to kind of connect with others. We know that there's stress in terms of our emotions. We feel anxious, irritable, depressed, we worry, we're easily discouraged, we lack joy. And then we know there's stress in the mental area where we are confused, lethargic, forgetful, we kind of space out or zone out, or we do a lot of negative self-talk. All of these are areas in which we experience stress, okay? And so there's a number of ways to address it. And because we have sort of this short 30 minutes, I think I guess the original plan in my head this morning was to figure out one aspect and deal with that. However, not any one particular thing is kind of sticking out to me in terms of what I'm being led to share. So let's kind of give an overview of different things. So we know that sometimes managing our stress, even if it's, say, we need to perform better on the job. Say you had an evaluation and your manager wants you to be more productive, more efficient. Maybe there's stress because you have a lot of work to do inside the home with taking care of chores or taking care of the children, or you're having a lot of schoolwork and it's the end of the semester and you have papers to write or exams to take, or it could be stress where you just can't manage your finances and you're trying to make ends meet, as they say, trying to stretch the money, make everything, be enough. Or you're having stress in your relationship, you're not communicating well, there's some misunderstandings, there's some, arguments and such. There are all types of stress that we might face in a day. Sometimes there are simple kind of day-to-day things that we can do to help kind of shift those things or rearrange those things. It may be as simple as working a new schedule out. You may need to get up earlier, go to bed earlier, take your breaks in the day more frequently or shorter or what have you. It may be that you just lack enough energy physically. So maybe you need to start exercising, do something physical, stretch, do some calisthenics, walk, run, or something like that. Do some exercise to kind of get rid of excess tension. Maybe you need to do some positive self-talk, meditate, say affirmations, speak life into yourself. or be around people who speak life into you, who give you loving support and kindness. You may need to learn how to shut out or learn how to deal with negative people. There are a number of things that we can kind of do just in terms of how we move about our day. We may need to set time aside to just decompress, shut down, pamper ourselves, nurture ourselves, soak our feet, get a massage, take some deep breaths, and just allow our improved or increased oxygen flow through our bodies so that we can feel physically more relaxed and then mentally more relaxed. Or we may need to join some kind of community group, you know, do some kind of club or organization, volunteer your time, things of this nature. Or sometimes it's simply we need to look at things a little differently. Sometimes we get stuck in our patterns and our routines of what it is we do, when we do it, how we do it. Sometimes talking to other folk, getting ideas of how other people manage life in these same situations will help you kind of adjust sort of just how you look at things. Some of us look at, like, I have to do this, I have to do that. Sometimes you have to just say, you know, maybe let me just figure out something different in terms of how I can move about life. Let me switch what my short-term goals are or what my long-term goals are. So there are a number of things that we can maybe do just in and of ourselves, our schedules, our routines, our thought patterns. However, if you need some additional help or suggestions, here are a lot of 101, as a matter of fact, stress relievers. And so there are many here that I'll just sort of leave posted here for a moment. And some of these are things that you wouldn't even think of. These are things that can help you relieve stress and you maybe would not normally consider it. Dance stands out to me, daydream, forgive someone, go for a brisk walk, go swimming, go to work a different route, go fishing, laugh at something you did, lie in a hammock, listen to the birds, watch a really good movie, count to 10 or 1,000, you know, climb a mountain, do a crossword puzzle. There's so many different things that are suggested here. Some are great, some are just sort of, you know, but some may kind of resonate with you. The key is get as many ideas as you can as to how to handle stress and implement what works for you. If some of these is like, I would never do that, fine, move on to the next one, right? You know, there's one list here, take a child to a playground, take a deep breath and let it all out, take a leisurely stroll, take a long bath, take a nap. I don't generally take naps, but that might be something that if I was looking to change my routine or improve my productivity and reduce my stress, maybe I do need to chart, you know, some time out to take a nap. But sometimes we just get stuck in what we normally do. Sometimes we have to get out of what we normally do. Take an herb tea break. Take one day at a time, right? Focus on just today, not so much what you have to do tomorrow, the next day, next month. Take it day by day. Take the back roads, you know, take the long or the scenic route, as we call it. Take the stairs rather than hopping on the elevator, you know, park far away so that you can take a longer walk to your building and take the stairs just to kind of get some extra time to kind of decompress, wind down, prepare for the day or what have you. Take time and watch the sunset or get up early and watch the sunrise. Take up knitting, crocheting, drawing, sketching. If you're a kinetic type of person, build some things, you know, make some things, put something together, repair something that's been kind of broken around the house, something that maybe doesn't require your normal regular thought pattern or your normal routine. That can become therapeutic. If you're angry, talk to a friend about it. Release it, write it down, and bury it, or write it down and set it on fire, you know, to just symbolically get rid of it. But there are a number of things that we can do to relieve stress. And so this is just a list of some of those things. Talk to yourself. I can do a great job. I can stay calm under pressure. I am amazing. I'm built for this. You know, I can handle all things that come at me, right? I am peace. I am love. I am joy. You know, anything that will work, even if you've never thought of it, take it into consideration and try those things in terms of relieving your stress. I will skip these handouts, and if you have the packet, I think that they're important, but these kind of give you a breakdown of what physiologically causes stress, or what is responsible physically for stress, or what organs, or more so what glands and hormones manage stress, and what to do to kind of make sure that those body parts are working completely so that you can function properly. Some handouts here talking about stress. One that always, I think, resonates with me is yawning. Yawning relieves tension, right? So they always say, really yawn. You feel a yawn coming on, really get into it, you know, yawn completely and fully, and just allow all of that tension to kind of go away as you release that yawn. I found that interesting. Certain foods like nuts and seeds can also help relieve stress because of the minerals that they have and how they impact the nervous system and the cardiovascular system. So there's so many things. We know that herbal teas, there are a lot of herbs that are considered sedatives or nervine teas that will help relax the body and relieve stress. Anxiety, we know, again, has a physiological component. And certain therapies that are good for anxiety. We know that there are certain herbs that are also great for relieving anxiety, especially if you're prone to panic attacks. There are herbs like kava kava and skullcap and passion flower, lemon balm, valerian. These are all sedative types of herbs that kind of can help relieve anxiety and stress and those types of things. There are even homeopathic remedies. We've talked a bit about homeopathy in, I think, week 2, but there is aconitum, I'm not even sure how it's pronounced. We always use the abbreviations with the homeopathic remedies. So Acon is what we usually refer to as this first one listed here, or Argin for the second one, or Cali Carb for the third one. But these are all homeopathic remedies that are good for dealing with anxiety and panic attacks, loneliness, things of that nature, certain types of fears. So we know that there are different herbal cures, natural cures. Flower remedies, we also usually talk about in this section. We know that these are great for dealing with certain types of stress, anxiety, and such. Aspen, cherry plum, mimulus, rock rose, these are good flower remedies that heal the emotions. So these bring us back into balance when we're having certain fears or certain types of anger or loneliness or depression or sadness or resentment. There are a number of flower remedies that help to balance the emotions. We know that this one talks about grief. So yes, we know that in these days and times, there are a lot of incidents that create grief and sorrow and sadness. We know that there are many natural remedies for grief. This handout highlights that. And just as I briefly demonstrated, we know that deep breathing or any kind of conscious breathing is excellent for managing stress. And so this handout simply talks about deep breathing, where we are inhaling through the nose, we're allowing the chest to expand, the diaphragm contracts, and we kind of hold our breath. And then through the nose, we exhale, we allow the chest to relax, the diaphragm relax, and the belly contracts. And it just walks you through the physical components of taking a deep cleansing breath, and then what benefits you get from it. We know that conscious breathing, even though we don't have to think about breathing, it's one of those voluntary and involuntary types of actions that the body has. But when we consciously do breath work, especially deep breathing exercises, we know that it detoxifies and releases toxins. It relieves tension. relaxes the mind, body, and brings clarity. We know that it can relieve pain. A lot of time, even like hypnotherapy and other kind of mind-body medicines that focus on breath and mind power, we know can even relieve pain, even though we know that's a very physical thing. But there's definitely that connection. So we know that breathing exercises can also strengthen the immune system, can improve the quality of the blood, can strengthen the lungs, improve cellular regeneration, and elevates the mood. So breathing exercises is an excellent way to relieve stress as well. And these handouts just talk further about the benefits of it, why to do it, how to do it. There are a number of different breathing exercises, and I think I did include in this packet a number of different conscious breathing exercises. If you don't have the packet, you can certainly email me, I'll send it to you. But this is something you can just take a month and each day kind of pick a different type of breathing exercise and practice it and figure out which one works well for you. What helped you? What helped give you more energy? What helped you sleep better? What helped you feel more calm and less anxious? But the following pages talk about all the different kinds of positions, types of breaths to take. They have different names for them. So we're going to skip over those right now. But as you see, as I'm scrolling by, there's fire breaths, there's alternate nostril breathing, there's connection breaths, angel breaths, sun, moon breaths. They're all different types of exercises that you can try. And this is something that you can even do no matter where you are, even if you are at work. You know, depending on how much privacy you have. You could be in transport, you could be commuting to and from work, and you may be able to even try some of these different type of breathing exercises. So it's not something that's very time consuming. It is something you can even implement while doing other things. Now, I have to say that's just me and my busy self, even explaining it like that. Ideally, you should set time away where you can just focus on the breathing. But me, who always has a ton of things to do, I hate when people add things for me to do, right? So I'm even giving you an option to do it in conjunction with or along with all the other things you may have to do. Because sometimes we have to implement things like this in the midst of our day, in the midst of all of our numerous chores and responsibilities. But if we can find a different way to get some relaxation or to get a boost, or to be able to function again more productively, we can implement some of these breathing exercises that can really help us navigate through all our daily responsibilities and routines. Sniff breathing, long, deep breathing. So there are many, as you can see. So I'm trying to get to this. Okay, so another way of dealing with stress, we know that there are many benefits to massage. Touch therapies in general. So whether it's reflexology, whether it's massage, or the different types of massage, there's shiatsu massage, there's deep tissue massage, there's hot stone massages, and I'm sure others that are just not coming to mind at the moment. There are all kinds of body work, cranial sacral, and others that I just can't think of at the moment. But touch therapy, manipulating and maneuvering the body in different ways can create a lot of stress release. It can enhance circulation. It can improve your quality of sleep. It can improve your mobility. Sorry, I'm getting a lot of calls right now. It can improve your joint mobility. It can speed up healing. It can boost your immune function, improve your mental alertness. So there are many benefits to getting massage. And then just the healing power of touch. I've mentioned this before. A lot of times we don't have person-to-person contact, depending on your lifestyle, your situation, your relationship status, or what have you. But the healing touch is so powerful. And so even just having and connecting with someone else's energy, and of course, we're talking about the right person, the right type of energy, we know that it can have so much healing power. So if you find a good touch therapist, massage therapist, we know this can be healing in a number of different ways. So these benefits listed included. This handout gives you some choices of how to do self-massage, different massage movements and things that you can do with different parts of the body. What exercises you can do with your neck, on your feet, and your lower back. We know that these are things that we sometimes have to do ourselves if we do not or have not found a good massage therapist. Reflexology is a very therapeutic, specialized kind of massage where it uses the reflex points on the hands and the feet. Even sometimes people use the ears, but they are points that correspond, or zones that correspond to different parts of the body. This is something I often talk about. This it's part of my nightly routine. After I shower and I'm doing my moisturizing, I use my oil and shea butter on my feet, and I massage the different areas on the bottom and the tops of my feet to create that relaxation and just to do sort of an overall self-care thing with the reflex points on my feet. You can do it on your hands. This is something definitely you can do as you move about your day. It doesn't have to be, oh, I use this kind of cream or this kind of oil. You can simply massage different parts of your hands, of your feet, of your ears, and create some relaxation, relieve some tension. All of these are things we can do. And again, I'm all about empowering ourselves. So again, if you don't have someone else who can touch you, you can touch yourself. Touch your hands, touch your feet, touch your ears, rub your neck, your lower back, your arms, your legs. You have to take care of you. And if you know, oh, wow, this really felt good, or I really felt tense there, or there was really a knot in my shoulder, take control and massage and stimulate those different areas so that you get relief and comfort so that you can function and go about your day. This is just another look at the zones or reflex points on the feet. I think I have one here for the ears. This is another one for the hands and feet. And I just tried finding different ones that would just really help point out the different areas so that you were familiar. And yes, and then this is the ear. So again, every part of the body corresponds with a zone or point on the hands, feet, and ears. We also know that crystals can also be used to help with your healing of stress and release of stress, your healing from grief, from anxiety, from depression, getting restful sleep, to help you dream, to help you avoid nightmares, all sorts of things. So we know that crystals are mineral formations that God created. They have their own energies, their own powers, their own characteristics, and they have particular healing power within the body and within space, period. So if it's in your room, if it's in your car, if it's in your office, if you're holding it, touching it, if you're laying it on your body, if you're laying it in a particular space, it will emit certain energy. So these handouts will list different crystals that will do different things, whether it's fight off anxiety, whether it's help you sleep, things of that nature. So if you are a worry ward and you have a lot of things on your mind that you're worried about, red tiger's eye, amethyst, these are excellent for that. If you're having trouble with sleeping, you can't get to sleep easily, or you get to sleep and then you wake up and can't get back to sleep, or whatever form of insomnia, howlite, moonstone, opal, ruby, these are crystals that are excellent for that, and so on and so forth. There's a list here at the end that gives, I think, 15, and I got carried away with putting these handouts here because I was like, oh, this is good information, let me include this. And this is good information, and let me include this. But these are just some of the crystals that are good for stress and anxiety. So some of the ones listed here are selenite, there's smoky quartz, there's sodalite, there's carnelian here, there's rose quartz, there's angelite, there's black tourmaline. So we know that crystals have healing powers. Y'all know I love crystals. I collect crystals, so I won't get off in too much of a tangent about that because we are running out of time. But all of these are tools that we can use to relieve our stress, to help get over our depression and our anxiety, and help us function well so that we're not only physically well, but we're emotionally and mentally well also. And the flower remedies I briefly mentioned earlier. So just as with homeopathics and herbs, we know that there are flower remedies that heal and balance the emotions. There are 38 English flower remedies, and then there are 42 Australian flower remedies. And I'm sure the flowering parts of other trees and shrubs throughout the world perhaps are used in traditional cultures for this purpose as well, but these are the ones we can get kind of documented, and there've been much study about, and there, you know, is kind of paperwork to say, okay, this one does that, this one does this. So I'm not saying that what we call English flower remedies and the Australian flower remedies are the only ones that exist, but this is the information that's readily available for you to use. And these are, if you recall, we talked about homeopathic remedies. These are just remedies that are taken under our tongues, 3 drops, 3, 4, 5 drops under the tongue, and you just allow it to get into the bloodstream so that you feel emotionally well. You're in balance. You know, you've not been overcome with resentment, or you've not been overcome with any mental exhaustion or the challenges of change and transition. So these are excellent for any number of issues that we might be going through emotionally. And I think I am out of time. If you have questions, feel free to, and this is just a list of herbs. If you have other questions, feel free to email me. If you need the packet, send the email. I think I haven't looked at the questions or comments at all. Hopefully Award was able to list my email there. Feel free to send me an email asking for the packet or any questions you have about what we talked about today. And thank you for joining us, and join us next week. And as always, I bid you good health and peace.
Yes, I did include the email address in the comment section. It's nana.akua1. The question, maybe Nana Akua, you can respond to that before you go.
Yeah, I'm missing most of what you're saying, but what I'm doing right now before I go is I'm scrolling through and seeing what it's a couple of comments I'll respond to. I don't know if you had another request, Award. Did you say something else?
No, I was saying if you can respond to the question which Mugani made in the chat room.
About the causes of stress?
Something like that is to
yeah, okay, so yeah, I was actually about to type that in, but we know that so many things cause stress. I mean, that's just life. We know that each and everything that you experience, and what some would consider stress or would cause stress for one person really may not cause stress for another person. So it can be simply your work load. It could be just the challenges of taking care of children. It could be stressful just being in a relationship. There's so many issues. And then of course, when you're talking from a political point, you know, always being, you know, bullied and picked on and trampled over, you know, as Black folk, as African people, all of this is stress. And so we always have to look inward. We always have to take care of ourselves. We also have to, you know, we always have to keep on top of self-care and stress reduction so that we can continue to fight the fight.
Thank you so much. Okay, sorry. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, Nana Akua. But next week, we'll give you some of the questions which come through along the meeting. We appreciate you.
Sure. Okay, you're welcome. Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye. Thanks everyone, those who are interacting in the chat room, are communicating with Nana Akua and also asking questions. For handouts, I did include the Gmail email address for Nana Akua. You can reach out to her and request for other handouts for this stress management and everything. So on next, I'm going to have Yvonne. Yes, I can see comments are coming through with email addresses. Kindly reach out to nanaakua1@gmail.com for your handouts. We appreciate you. So if one can go ahead and present the Pan-African History Lecture with Dr. Tyreen Wright.
Hello. Let me see if you can see me. Oh, okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Pan-African History and Organizing class for I Love Black People. So you should have read chapter 6 of the book, which was the African exclusion measure. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that and why we would even look at such a case. Hello, someone said hello. Why we would look at why we even look at such a case. And I'm glad that I came in while the discussion, actionable engagement was going on, because that's the point, right? So our conversation has been about the history of Pan-Africanism, what that meant, unity for the purpose of eradicating oppression and exploitation of African people and Black people everywhere we are, right? And so that's what you should have gotten out of chapter 2 that we read from the book 2, Washington Africa. And then this past week, we came in with the readings on the African exclusion measure, which is an evidentiary case, a case where you see someone organize, right, and challenge US legislation that would have excluded any person of the African or Black race from the United States from 1915 onwards. And that was none other than Booker T. Washington. Most people don't know that, right? That is part of the case. And he's doing that on behalf of African people globally. So challenging, pushing against US legislation and legislators on behalf of, to the benefit and on behalf of African people internationally, not within the United States, but from outside, right? And so we know we have that dynamic too, right? Various African people, but who tend to, sometimes internalize white supremacy and culture and not act on behalf of each other. So in this case, you see someone who is born in the United States advocate for African people who are outside of the United States. And why would we look at that? We look at that because that is certainly not just because the people are, that is certainly an example of Pan-Africanism, not just because the people who he's engaging in advocacy for are outside of the United States, but because of the fact that he is very acutely aware of the fact that he wants to do it to the benefit, right? At the time, Tuskegee was established and there was a steady stream of students coming from the African continent to Tuskegee. Tuskegee was also a hub for African and Black students in the Caribbean, Central and South America, okay? A lot of people don't know that. That being said, one of his main motivations for challenging this piece of US legislation was to make sure that that steady flow of students could still and always continue to come to the United States and learn and take their skills back to their respective communities of origin. And so we're looking at it as an example of Pan-Africanism because it's not an intangible. It would change US legislation for the next, right? This is sort of a hot topic when we talk about African immigration, because we have the situation of Africans coming out of Haiti, right, who were stopped recently at the border. Now you see, you're getting a very different set of outcomes with Ukraine, right? They're welcoming Eastern European refugees to the United States and even giving $40 billion to the United States as to Ukraine. However, Haitian refugees, after a natural disaster and political unrest, are what? Turned away. Okay, so you must imagine if this change in US legislation had never take place, it would even be more hostile, meaning there would be absolutely no way for African people outside of the United States to come into the United States, be it for work and or for education. And it also changed the demographic of the African community within the United States for those who came and stayed, didn't just come and go to school and return. So it would impact our community largely and hopefully to our benefit, because anytime we exercise our right to move around the world freely, I think that that is the direction that we want to go. Okay. So since you all have read the case, I want to field questions. I'm gonna do things a little differently this time. I want to field questions really quick about the case, the African exclusion measure. If you want to jump in the chat and ask some questions about that, because there's another case I usually use in the context of this course, but because we're shortening things, I gave you the shortest case and the most potent case that would emphasize what action looks like, right? Like what someone taking action to the collective benefit of African and Black people would look like, right? And that case is a short and sweet, decisive example of that. I'm going to be introducing your upcoming readings for next week, for this week right here, which will be the last week that we're in, and it'll look at how Pan-Africanist thought played out for other people like Du Bois, who took the organizational route and creating organizational bodies, right? How did he express his form of Pan-Africanism, and what were the benefits? As I said in the beginning of the seminar, we're always looking, it's not Pan-Africanist if there is nothing that we can measure and weigh at the end, right? So when people always, there's an active conversation around Pan-Africanism, at least here in the Western Hemisphere, like, what if Pan-Africanism done for us, for those who know about ADOS, and then those who subscribe to a more Pan-Africanist line. A lot of people who oppose Pan-Africanism ask, what does it produce for us? And that's just precisely the right question to ask. Pan-Africanism, by definition, should always produce something for us, right? It's not just enough to gather, right? So also too, I just want to state that in the context, I don't know if I'm going to do it in this session, but I see that that's already a conversation when I came in. Part of what you will be doing in here, because it's always backed with action, we'll be walking through the app, right? Because that is the action you're engaging. That is what you're going to do for Black people and African people to find out what is safe, or share what is that you places and spaces and services that are safe for us, right? And that are about the preservation of our life, our well-being, and our dignity, right? So, but I want to check real quick into the app into the chat. If people have questions about the African exclusion measure, this would be a good time to get them answered, so I can further describe or explain any details about that case. so that we have, a fuller understanding. Okay, nobody has any questions? Okay. How many people were actually able to read the case as it was posted in the app, in WhatsApp? Chime in the chat. Did you read the case? Who was able to read the case? I hope some folks were able to read the case, so I'm not just talking. Okay, so I'm going to reiterate, and I'll repost it in there so that it's a more recent thing, because I don't see any questions. So then what I'm going to do is just talk a little bit about what the upcoming reading is, and then how that is going to relate to the theme of the course. And the upcoming readings are on Du Bois, W.E.B. Du Bois. There are also some readings you will have by Nkrumah, Kwame Nkrumah, because historically we know that Pan-Africanism, while created and emerging in the, or I wouldn't even say created, I would say it becomes the phrase, the phrase is coined out here in the diaspora. Okay, I got one question. It was supposed to be about the case, the question, but I'll answer. The phrase Pan-Africanism is coined in the Western Hemisphere by diasporic Africans. However, it doesn't mean that it didn't always exist, right? I think it exists from the moment we leave the shores of Africa and arrive in the Americas, right? We are always trying to come together. Kwame Ture, AKA Stokely Carmichael, he always says, blood is thicker than, he said, because he is an ancestor now, he said, blood is thicker than water. That's why everywhere we are coming together. So in other words, although we as African people have been scattered, right, around the world and into the Western Hemisphere under unsavory circumstances, we are blood, right? And blood is thicker than water that separates us. And so we continue to come together. But so I believe that Pan-Africanism has always existed since our scattering. But the phrase is coined around 1900, right, by Henry Sylvester Williams. You read that in chapter 2, the first chapter you read in this seminar, called Booker T. Washington, Pan-Africanism and Pan-Africanists. However, it would have its highest expression on the African continent, when people like Nkrumah assert that the independence of Ghana can not only be about Ghana, but it must lead to the total liberation and unification of the African continent, right? And so we will delve a little bit into Nkrumah's philosophy and practice around Pan-Africanism. How did he come to understand Pan-Africanism, and how did he express it, right? So we will be looking at individual expressions of Pan-Africanism in the last week, and organizational bodies expressions of Pan-Africanism, meaning Du Bois would express his Pan-Africanism as the initiator of something called the Pan-African Congresses as a result of being a participant in the first Pan-African Conference in 1900. All of this is in chapter 2, the chapter that we read on Pan-Africanism. He would create an organizational body that would be the think tank for African leadership on the continent to strategize in terms of continental liberation from imperialist nations and colonialism, and ultimately how to move towards continental unity, right? So we will look at that. Individual expressions, philosophies of like Marcus Garvey, Du Bois, but then the manifestation of organizational bodies like the Pan-African Congresses, the continuous Congresses that would assist in the ideological development that led to many African liberation struggles, and ultimately to another organizational body that would come out of it, right? The OAU, the Organization of African Unity, and then ultimately the African Union. And there's much to speak about there, because today we can still debate about whether or not the African Union, which is the modern manifestation of all those organizational bodies, right? Initiated by Du Bois and others, and then, you know, the Congresses, the Pan-African Congresses, and then the Organization of African Unity, and then now it is expressing itself as the African Union. We can debate about whether or not the African Union itself is living up to the ultimate ideal and mission and vision that is Pan-Africanist to advance continental unity. Today, and I can tell you a little bit about that because I have participated in some African Union activities along those lines. But in 2004, I was a delegate to a conference called the First Conference of Intellectuals for Africa and the Diaspora. And at that time, that we were, myself and 500 other African intellectuals were brought to Dakar, Senegal, to give recommendations to the African Union on how we can move towards continental unity and what that would look like in every area of life, right? Economically, in terms of education, politically, and otherwise, right? Well, at that time, there was no unified African passport, hadn't even been initiated. There was no Pan-African free trade initiated, right? There was non-regional unity of various currency, you know, in that very country where this conference was held, we were using what are you using, Senegal? I forget, but anyway, I shouldn't forget because I lived in Senegal. But you know, the point is that those things didn't exist. And today they do, 20 years later, right? So while it's baby steps, they are steps that are moving towards the right direction. Now, the criticism I could give of the African Union is that I think it should be moving faster, right? It should be moving faster. But just to be very real about why we don't have continental unity in Africa, meaning functioning as one unified nation, a continent that's expressing itself as a nation. And I'm a little familiar with the conversation because at the time of that 2004 conference, there were people who were pushing that. And then there were people who were very lukewarm or cold to that in terms of leadership. And regionally, at the time, people like Abdoulaye Wade and people like Gaddafi were interested in regional unity in West Africa. But you have to understand, for African presidents, heads of states all over the continent to become unified as a one nation, those presidents would not be presidents, right? They would have to be a part of the whole, and which means to give up some measure of power, right? And our continuous struggle is getting people to give up the desire for individual wealth and even the opportunity to exploit the economy of their individual countries to come together and invest in our collective good, right? I mean, the key reason why there's not continental unity today on the African continent is simply because most presidents and heads of states would not want to give up their power. Right? And maybe this would not be the term, because we would have to make this manifest in the way that we needed to, but perhaps you giving up the presidency to become a governor instead of a president, right? So you still legislate and have some decision-making control over your region, your state in the union, but you are no longer the head of state, so to speak, right? Or the president. And when we think about somehow some of our leadership has manifested, we know that some people, that is a hard thing to swallow, right? But I do believe, because of three things, that's going to change. You all, there's a lot of our people here you see, and I Love Black People, are all over the continent of Africa. And we have 1.4 to 6 billion young people on the African continent who are 30 years old or younger, who are connected to the rest of the world, who are the fastest, the participants in the fastest growing entrepreneur markets in the world, which is the African continent. And the African continent, without a doubt, is the holder of a bulk of the world's most important resources, right? The world's resources are concentrated on the equator, with the concentration in the Congo, with a bulk of it being in the Congo and the 9 surrounding countries, the heart of Africa. So all of those things, three things, just kind of set Africa up for the trajectory that the next generation, the younger generation, probably will not tolerate, president for life type of behavior, and will probably push and have the power and ingenuity to push for something that is a little bit more beneficial to the masses, right? Because the numbers in Africa in terms of population are not going down, they're going up. And Africa is very young, right? Still, while the rest of the world is old. I live in the United States. The average white American, who makes up 75% of the population, is 60 years old or older. The average person in Africa is 30 years old or younger. The math, 20 years is nothing to Africa, right? And so that generation being connected to the rest of the world, they're not going to tolerate, this very extreme leaders from the aristocracy or the elites of Africa, who are not going to share power with the people, or the people are not going to stand for not being the beneficiaries of the best of what Africa has to offer, right? So I'm going to look at the questions. I have 3 right now. Hello, Oscar from Zambia. And then I see, okay, good. Oh, you didn't see the case in the Zoom? In the WhatsApp? I'm going to post the case again along with the final articles, so you guys can see that. I'll do that shortly after we get off. And then I have one question from Gershon. It says, I believe a platform like this push for Pan-Africanism like this, that pushes for Pan-Africanism. In this case, what's the modern call for action to liberate Africa economically? Well, I think and then the other question is how do you think Africa will be united while countries are having conflicting interests? I think countries have conflicting interests, possibly. Well, how can they unite? One, the key unifying factor, and I get that Africa is, the heart, the home of humanity. So like I've said in the previous lectures, that we are the oldest friends, foes, family, right? We have been here since time, the dawn of humanity. And so our relationships and our good and bad predate the advent of the European. However, once the European emerges and imposes these systems, and because of their own need to capture resources, comes out of Europe and into Africa and exploits Africa's human resource and material resources, this has created the need for us to unify. I think it's complicated, but I think I just already sort of inadvertently answered that question. How do we get unity in Africa when countries still have their conflicts? Well, one of the things that's going to happen is that we're going to have to be able to see our common interest, right? We're not going to be able to see our common interest if we don't look at the facts. So in other words, if one of the last issues that we get to is the fact that almost every African economy is exploited by European nations, and that is in essence why a very wealthy continent has in dollars and cents terms, still people who are not economically advancing. Well, we're going to have to come to terms with the fact that we have to address the common issue, right? Like, for instance, and this is happening. For instance, the Congo recently basically said that they are going to put an end to foreign mining in the nation. I don't know if any of you stay abreast of those kind of issues, but I do. And they made it clear that there will not be any foreign nations mining in the Congo. That's a major step, okay? It's many light years after the death of Patrice Lumumba, who would have been an advocate, believed that the power of the Congo should belong to the Congolese people, right? And he lost his life in that struggle, right? To choose who would benefit the Congo and over Congolese unity, okay? As a result, you understand the United States infiltrated and caused a coup, right? Mobutu Sese Seko is involved in alliance up with the US that had Patrice Lumumba assassinated. And that took the Congo from Belgian colonialism. If you can imagine a hand in a pot. At one time, only Belgium's hand was in the pot that was the Congo. Post Patrice Lumumba's assassination under Mobutu and the United States, because certainly was the United States, you can see many little white hands in the Congo. It has opened it up to international colonialism. So now the United States and every other European nation has their hand in the Congo, extracting resources from the Congo, okay? And he died over that very issue, right? Because the United States couldn't get cobalt and coltan anywhere else in the world. The Soviets have their own supply, but he was also talking to the Soviets, and they were not going to put up with not having a source for cobalt and coltan, which is responsible technology that is used in the military, right? And to create resources for the military. So in other words, those materials produce things that can machinery and technology used for the armed forces in this country, right? So he died over that. However, 1960, 80 years later, almost, we have the Congo coming out and saying, everybody else, see you later. You are not going to be able to directly extract resources from the Congo, right? It's past due. It's past due. But that has a lot to do with just the changing of the guard and the human politics and advancement in general, right? There's going to come a time where the people, you will get fearless people. In Patrice Lumumba's time, he was perhaps not the only one, but one of the stronger ones. Now you can have a million Patrice Lumumba in the Congo, right? Because the people on the ground can be just as informed as anyone else in the country because of what they have access to through technology, right? They can go and read the same things that I read that says this is part of what the Congo is moving towards in terms of telling foreign European nations that you're not going to come in here and extract resources, right? To the benefit of Europe, right? So the short answer to that question is that we're going to have to emphasize our common interest and how our common interests are more important than our age-old conflicts, right? Because it is, let's be very clear. The reason why many African or existing conflicts are exploited by Western countries, right? Who exploit those conflicts in order to extract resources and keep the people in chaos while they do so, right? So you can't organize around this issue or that issue because you have someone fueling your conflict. So you never pay attention to the real issues, right? Running interference, a distraction, basically, right? So they keep you in chaos. Meanwhile, the real issue still exists. Anybody coming from an oil wealthy country should be well backed, should be able to go almost anywhere in the world for education. Anybody coming from a resource wealthy nation should be able to have a certain standard of living, right? Have clean water, all of these things. But the reason why those things don't exist is because the leadership that's still in bed with Europe, right? And what should go to the people does not go to the people. If you wanted to get an idea of how the nation should function, you look at Libya before Gaddafi was assassinated. Whether you like Gaddafi or not, the Libyan people benefited from a lot of the national wealth. And that's what you want to see, right? So that's one of the things. I think two things. One, we have to be very real and access the information about why our immediate environment stays in chaos, because everywhere we are, that's pretty much the scenario. Even outside the African continent, other African communities around the world, there are ways in which the Western world keeps us, our communities, in chaos, so we can't organize around the issues that address them exploiting us, right? Whether it's us as human resources or whether it's the land that we are indigenous to, and the resources that come from it, right? And so, and the other way we're going to get there is young blood, like young new people, right? Who don't carry the same animus that are connected to historical conflicts, right? A younger generation was like, listen, that hasn't been my reality. I'm going to put that aside, right? Our ethnic conflicts. One of the readings I'm going to give you is, and I'm going to cover it as well in posting a film, which we'll be watching this week. It's called Cuba: An African Odyssey. Very interesting film. And this film asserts how Cuba assisted Africa in many independence and liberation struggles. But the focus is not on Cuba. It tells the story of Patrice Lumumba and many other, goes around and around and around to various countries on the African continent and discusses, in documentary format, the path to liberation, their actual struggles for liberation. from imperialism. But notably, there is Amilcar Cabral. And Amilcar Cabral, the great revolutionary from Guinea-Bissau and Cape Verde, was someone who believed and recognized that we have ethnic diversity on the African continent, right? That we have ethnic differences, that we have cultural differences. He acknowledged that, and that's what's so extraordinary about him. He did not just adopt the Marxist-Leninist line, which many of our leadership did, and said that culture didn't matter. He said culture matters, okay? Culture matters and our history matters, because that is one of the ways in which the colonizers, the imperialists, destroyed us and colonized us, right? They erased our culture, and they basically jacked our historical memory. We're forbidden to reference our own history and engage in our own culture, even linguistically, right? So you have, most African countries have what? A European language that is the national language, right? That was very deliberate in colonizing the people. Destroy the people's culture, replace it with your own. But this is the significant thing, and this is my third aspect to the same question, because both of the questions were similar. Amilcar Cabral, in the struggle for independence in Guinea-Bissau from the Portuguese, said that in this struggle, literally the armed struggle, nobody but the people of Guinea-Bissau, who were ethnically different before being colonized and still were, nobody but them could take up arms, because Cuba had come into the mix and was assisting strategically and materially. But Amilcar Cabral said, no Cuban is to come and fight our war. This war is for the people of Guinea-Bissau, who were different before colonialism. And this war, this collective struggle for our liberation in this country, is going to bring us together. His exact words were, the struggle will prepare the people for the victory. And what he meant by that is that our collective struggle, going through this struggle together, people who were prior to this different, and maybe even in conflict with each other, right? Because we know that colonization separates the colonial lines as they cut up the continent. It separates some people who were the same, and it puts together some people who were very different within national borders, right? We could see that all over the African continent, right? So the engagement in a collective struggle against a common opposer, oppressor, exploitative system creates our new bond, creates a new relationship, right, for us as African people. And so this is part of also how we today, this is why we study the past, so we can take the best strategies and practices and apply it to our current problems and situations. So how we form a bond today is by engaging, and this is part of what we're doing. We are collectively, you're all only here to collectively strategize around our current situation. What's the reality? African people and Black people everywhere we are in the world are being mistreated, if not killed, right? Everywhere we are. And so we are coming together. This is a process. And this process, even of engagement right now, is forging a new relationship, forging a new bond, right? And we will be a new people, right? A more unified people, a people who can act on behalf of African people collectively, okay? And to the benefit of African people collectively. And so the process, it's like running a race with someone or working together, right? Your work buddy. Yes, you forge relationships, you forge camaraderie. We have the reality is that we have a collective and common interest in doing so, right? So those are my answers. I'm gonna see what else is here because I think I'm over time, and I'll be posting in the WhatsApp group. I'll repost the African exclusion measure. I'll be posting on Garvey, Du Bois, and I'll be posting the film at Nkrumah also, Amilcar Cabral, and then the film as well. Okay, so we have a lot of stuff coming ahead to wrap up. Now people have a lot to say. Okay, what is the plan to curb Black on Black violence in our countries? The same solution, the issue of our common interests. However, let's just say this, you don't forfeit on justice, right? So we have that issue out here in the United States. A lot of us ideologically function just like Europeans and are willing to commit atrocities against our own people because that's easier to do. We're in proximity to each other. And very often it's like Fanon talks about, it's like, many of our people have lost our minds to white supremacy and culture. We're in Black bodies, but we have white minds, and we are fully engaged in European and Western culture, which is inherently, because of their history, anti-human. And so we are very often the first to act out some kind of atrocity against each other. We still have to defer to justice. Right? So anybody who is going to, this is why this organization also addresses xenophobia, because that's what it is, right? Meaning xenophobia, yes, there's a political position, a national position on xenophobia, but also xenophobia is Black on Black, right? And the impetus is national identity, right? So you're intolerant of people who don't have the same nationality, but you could still be Black as well, right? You're also a Black person, and how can you commit any atrocity against another Black person? So, so my answer to that question, Patrick, is that we still have to defer to justice. So we don't tolerate the abuse. So in other words, the things that we experience at the hands of Europeans, we will not, it is unacceptable to accept them from our own. And that's why culture is still relevant for us, because whose culture is that, that we are acting out? Is that our own culture? And then if it is, we need to adjust, not adjust and submit to an anti-human culture or practice, but adjust and progress beyond that, because we all want to be safe in this world, and we all want to be safe in our homes, and we all want to be safe in our communities with our own people or around anybody else. I don't think Africa is running out of time, because you're talking about the youngest people on the planet at this time, Chris. Chris Emmanuel. Right. I mean, yes, we know that the present leadership in Africa is very reluctant to give up their individual power for the continent as a whole to become more powerful and more useful to the masses. The idea, the place we want to get to is not even so much a United States of Africa, because we don't want to model anything in Africa after the United States of America, but we want a unified Africa, and a unified Africa that in essence means and Africa, where African people, the masses, benefit more than anybody else from what Africa has to offer in terms of resources, material and otherwise, right? What we're trying to get to is that African people benefit more than anybody else. So right now, Europeans in the Western world benefit more from what Africa has to offer than the people on the African continent. Yes, of course, Patrick, yes, there's, yes, Patrick said that there's greedy political leaders. Yes, this is something that is a long time problem and issue. And we, you know, that's our constant struggle. It's a continuous struggle. One of the things I want to reemphasize about I'm saying in terms of what's going to change things, sometimes you don't get to change people, but nature, you know, nature has its remedy for us. None of us live forever, right? And that is the natural order of things. That's the cycle of life. So when you have stubborn, old guard African leadership, know that whatever you see, sometimes those people are just a cautionary tale to you, how you don't want to be. And so it's really just not the response, it's the responsibility of the next generation to take the best of what that previous generation had to offer, but leave those things that are useless to us and that are negative to us, leave those things behind, not perpetuate those things. And so in other words, nature is going to take care of all of us, right? Ultimately. And sometimes that's unfortunately how it has to happen with some African leadership. But the responsibility of the next generation, the younger generation, is not to perpetuate some of those adverse sentiment, negative qualities that the previous, because a lot of times people grow up and they become their parents. There's a saying, you know, and their parents meaning that generation. There's a saying, we are doomed to be our parents unless we decide to be something different. We are doomed. And so when you know, great, your parents can teach you great things, but you also should be aware of your parents' contradictions and don't duplicate those things, right? And so in that instance, that older generation, or that generation before us, I don't want to say older, but you know, the generation before us, you can see their contradictions, you can see the current contradictions, and we have to be committed to duplicating, and we have to push for new blood to move through, you know, African nations, new, young, and fearless political leadership that is willing to do things differently. Okay. Frankly speaking, the United States of Africa at this point is compound, complex reasons for so many. Yes, but our advocacy can be reached having one passport. Okay, so one passport exists. The currency, we have regional, right? But there's regional unifications of the currency, right? Cross-country trades, we have that, the Pan-African free and fair trade, and then we can work in this, right? So that's not bad, right? And I'm somebody who was a part of that conversation in 2004, and we didn't have any of these things that you mentioned. Okay, so that is progress. We need people who are going to make sure that it's authentic, right? And continuous. The creation of Monrovia Group, Casablanca Group caused Africa nothing but a total, absolutely, sovereignty and power to fight for Africa. Absolutely, I'm very familiar with that. Yes, absolutely. Are African leaders not prepared to relinquish power? Right, they're not ready to give up power. White on white crime is the Russian versus Ukraine. Right, I have sick of the buy and the black. Yes, me too, Chris. running out of time in terms of being enslaved again by China, French, Russia, or whoever. If we don't get our act together, PLO Lumumba laid out a great case of that happening. Yes. So let me just say this, I saw the question on black crime, and I see your question, Emmanuel, about white on white crime. Let me be very clear. That's just propaganda. And people start to characterize, and I'm way over now by 9 minutes, so I'm going to wrap up. But people like to characterize conflicts between African people as, something that happens because we're inherently wretched in some way. That's pure nonsense. Nobody is more violent. I teach world history. I didn't, in this group, I don't think I really gave you a full background or whatever, but I'm a history and I teach history and political science, and I teach them in the Africana context. That being said, nobody is more violent than Europeans. When I teach world history, most of the first half of the class is spent on the human history and the development of Africa. Why? Because we are not just human, but we are the humans. Most of the time, the human beings have been on this earth. We have been in Africa, okay? Of that 200,000 to 300,000 years. And we have been culturally African because for most of the time on this earth, to be human is synonymous with being African. Okay, the advent of the European and even other groups of people in the Americas is a relatively recent thing. Europeans only existing 7,000 to 8,000 years out of our 200,000 to 300,000 years, and Native Americans and others only in existence for anywhere between 10,000 to 50,000 years or so. Okay, certainly not older than African people. That being said, I almost lost my train of thought. That being said, we are the people who, I lost my train of thought. We're the people who are going to solve our issues. And when we look at the larger picture of world history, I got my train of thought back. When I teach human history and I get out of Africa finally and get to Europe, majority of the history is about war. And, I noticed that, but my students also noticed that as well, that majority of the history is marked by war. And it's only when Africans are in conflict that we try to make it mean that African people are wretched and that the war is characteristic, or conflict is characteristic of us. But that has a lot to do with propaganda and the way people want to put want to label people. For example, Europeans, so they always like to say in that in Africa, there's an ethnic cleansing of this sort or that sort. Let's just be very clear. World War II, the Holocaust was Europeans engaging in an ethnic cleansing. Yeah, of other Europeans who were of a particular culture and faith. That's what that was, an ethnic cleansing. They conducted an ethnic cleansing, started in one country, namely Germany, and were moving across Europe, seeking to purge all of those nations of a particular ethnic group of people. And we know, we're Africans, we know how when people want to purge a certain group of people, they will do it under religious auspices, right? But we know that one group may tend to be of this religious orientation or that, right? So the ethnicity is aligning with the religious orientation, right? So it may look like it's Christian, Muslim, or this or that, Jewish, Muslim, or whatever the case may be. But it's really about who the people are, right? So we know that. That being said, Europeans did that. And unfortunately, they brought the whole world into their conflict. The difference with us is that, and I just did I was on a panel on war, and this was part of my presentation, which was that I noted that when we engage in conflict, we don't bring the whole world into it. The whole world is not going to end up in a war over a conflict amongst African people. When Europeans fight, and they have been fighting forever, I might share something next week to show you a map of Europe and how the borders of all of these nations constantly change. But what that denotes is the wars. They're warring and seizing different territories constantly. And it's notable. That is a notable characteristic of European culture because they've always been resource poor. And so they have always had to fight each other for resources, for land, right? Europe was overpopulated over 400 or 500 years ago, which is part of what pushes them out into the world, right? For territories and resources. So you can imagine, but war, they are from a war culture. That is a notable thing. And let's take the British, for example, who would come out into the world and colonize large parts of the world. The British, the people that would be known as British today, they commit fratricide for 1,000 years. The history is well documented. 1,000 years commit fratricide against each other. Okay, with father against son, brother against brother. That's what that means. Ethnic warring, tribal, really, they impose the word tribal on us, but tribe is their word and their reality. They were engaged in tribal wars for 1,000 years before they even come out into the world. Okay, and the strongest among them imposed the larger territory, right? It makes up the comprise of the larger British society, right? So that they take the society ultimately. They absorbed every other group. But so, you know, don't buy into it. Like, that's not real, right? There is no such thing. People fight who are closest to them. We've got to be on the side of justice, whether it's the guy right next to us or the guy across the ocean. Oh, okay. I'm sorry, Sanko. All right. So I think, yes, Alan Chroma, yes, I do. Western nations absolutely play a role in Africa not being united, because the Africa being, okay, so my last thing I'm going to say before I wrap up is this, and I was going to wait to get to it next week. We may think we're involved in a sterile process, like, oh, this Pan-Africanist stuff, you know, we're just trying to make sure that we're safe everywhere in the world. So for Europeans to function in the world the way they do, to have the resources they have, it is absolutely at the expense of Africa and African people. Whether that's in human resource, labor, or in material resource, right? That's really the rule everywhere we are. And so our unity is something that is in opposition to their well-being, for sure. Absolutely. Okay. We may think, because that's not, see, we have a totally different culture. That's not even on the mind of African people, trying to impact the outcomes of a people who are across an ocean or across a sea. Right? That's not even on the mind. We're more practical. We're dealing with what's right in front of us. That's why every time I teach this course, there's so many questions about how to resolve day-to-day and internal and geopolitical conflicts that are in proximity to us. Having a conflict across the ocean or across the sea is something that That's not in the nature or even on the mind of most African people way back when or now, even though we crossed, Abubakar crossed an ocean, right? But didn't cross an ocean to make war like Europeans did, because he wasn't poor, but that being, resource poor. That being said, please don't ever think that our unity, that there are not people who don't oppose our unity. There are people who oppose our unity. This is why we're going to watch Cuba and African Odyssey and look at the case of Patrice Lumumba. We think like, who should care that we come together? Are you serious? When we come together, that means other people who are not in the places where the bulk of the resources come from, the world's resources come from, will have to be second to us. The whole world, to be quite frank with you, and I don't want to depress anybody, is slanted in the way that is in favor of African exploitation, which is directly to the benefit of European well-being, wealth, and your well-being and wealth in the world. Those things are diametrically opposed to each other. Right. Europe does not have the affluence or anything that it has without Africa in the mix. Right? The queen, the British queen don't have her crown and the diamonds in it without Africa. So yes, as we come together and we put each other first, right? Yes, everybody else becomes secondary, right? And just by saying that, the wealth of Africa should be for the people first is diametrically opposed to the well-being and the wealth of Europe. Europe has no real wealth. Eastern Europeans got a little something, natural gas, and a couple of Europeans have natural gas, but in terms of the resources that Africa has, no comparison. Europe can't survive without Africa, exploiting Africa and African people. Okay? They cannot. The lives they live, they cannot. This technology we're on right now doesn't exist without Africa. I'm sure most of you know that. Right? Africans say, no, you don't exploit our economy, take the raw resources out of here and throw pennies at us for it and then sell it back to us at super profits and to the rest of the world for super profits. That happens, it puts the rest of the world in shock. But listen, it's the inevitable. It's the inevitable. It's an inevitable. Okay. The great thing about human beings is this, and this is why we're priceless. We can improve ourselves. We can become smarter. Yeah. We can become stronger. We can heal ourselves, right? Literally, the human body can heal itself. The human mind can improve itself. Right? The human body can improve itself, right? The guys know you can get muscles. The girls know you can become faster. Yes. And that being said, with the youngest people on the planet and their access to the rest of the world, like we having this conversation, that is what gives us the best chances. And we have that. Right? So I do think that it can be done. Okay, folks, I'm over. I'm gonna, yes, of course, our unit is always fought by Europeans. Yes, thank you. I'm glad it's an interesting discussion. Okay. Hi, Florine, welcome. Okay, Oscar, Brother Alan. Okay, great. So I will be posting the things, the items I mentioned. Hello, Ali Mami. from Sierra Leone. No problem. I think I answered all the questions. I'll be posting the materials in the group, and this week is also the final week, so we'll also be watching the film Cuba and African Odyssey that will be posted along with the documents. You know, Du Bois, Marcus Garvey, Nkrumah, Amilcar Cabral, and the film. So you have quite a bit to keep you busy this week, okay? I think that's it. And then also too, will be next week, I will run through my version of, you know, some of the things that as a result of this course, you should be doing, actively doing, right? Because part of what we are doing here with I Love Black People is actively loving our people through action, loving our people through action. I come from a political organization that always said that precise thing, right? There are a lot of people, you say you love Black people, you love African people. I say, yeah, I love our people. Okay, now, how do you love us, right? We need to love our people through action, right? So there are certain steps. And for us, this is minimal, right? You know, saying where it's safe for your brother who's right there, it's safe for him to go here, there, or wherever, based on your movement. So that's I wouldn't say it's small, because it could save someone's life, right? It will save some of our lives, literally, right? It's not small, but it is not laborious, right? It's not labor intensive. It's just us using our ingenuity. Okay, so I thank you all for taking your time, contributing your time. That is another action, right? Giving your God-given time to our collective cause. So I appreciate your time, your energy, and your participation. I will be posting the stated readings and film in the group, and I look forward to seeing you all next week. Okay, I am because we are. And please, everyone, be safe.
Yes, so thank you everyone that joined our today's meeting, and hope to see you next week. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. I am because we are.